We like to think of kindness as the purest expression of what it means to be human. The warm gesture, the selfless act, the helping hand extended without expectation. But what if that very light, the thing we celebrate as virtue, hides one of the darkest truths about the human psyche? What if kindness, at least as we often understand it, is not pure at all, but a mask, a disguise worn by the ego to make itself feel holy while remaining untouched by truth? It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? Because the idea that kindness could be anything other than good feels almost blasphemous. Yet, if you look closer, if you strip away the comforting narratives society feeds us, something begins to emerge from beneath the surface. It's not evil exactly. It's something far subtler, more insidious, a psychological sleight of hand. We call it compassion, but much of it is driven by self-interest, fear, and the desperate human need to be seen as good. Nietzsche saw it before most. He called it the morality of the herd, a collective hypnosis where kindness becomes conformity and pity becomes power disguised as virtue. In his view, what we call altruism often hides resentment, a soft, smiling face covering an unconscious desire to dominate others by appearing morally superior. We don't give out of pure generosity. We give because it allows us to feel like gods, and the world rewards us for it. You can see it everywhere, in the performative empathy online, in the charity that seeks applause, in the quiet way people weaponize goodness to control others. We've built an entire moral economy on the illusion that kindness is selfless. But every transaction of kindness has a subtext. Even when we say, "I expect nothing in return," the truth is we often expect something deeper: validation, belonging, forgiveness, relief from guilt, or the feeling of being needed. Freud would have called it sublimation, the redirection of darker instincts into socially acceptable behavior. We repress our aggression, our selfishness, our hunger for recognition, and then repackage it as kindness. But repression doesn't erase the impulse. It just changes its costume. The same instinct that drives domination now drives generosity. The same ego that seeks to conquer now seeks to save. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable it feels to reject someone's kindness? That discomfort isn't random, it's a signal. Because even the gentlest acts can carry invisible strings. Gifts can bind, favors can trap, and help can humiliate. Sometimes, to receive is to become indebted. And sometimes, to give is to claim subtle ownership. Kindness becomes a transaction, a silent contract written in emotional ink. The darker side of kindness is not that it causes harm, but that it often hides the true motive for giving. Modern psychology calls this moral licensing, the phenomenon where doing something good gives us unconscious permission to do something selfish later. It's the person who donates to charity but treats their employees terribly. The activist who fights for justice online but privately despises people. The friend who helps you only to remind you later that they did. We don't see it because the mask of virtue is so convincing, even to the one wearing it. And perhaps that's the cruelest trick of all. Not that we deceive others with our kindness, but that we deceive ourselves. We need to believe we are good, even when our actions come from woundedness, control, or ego. Because to face the raw complexity of our motives would mean confronting the parts of ourselves we've been taught to reject, the shadow, as Jung called it. The collection of impulses, desires, and emotions that the conscious mind denies in order to preserve its image. But that shadow doesn't vanish when ignored. It waits beneath every smile, every, "I'm just trying to help." It colors our compassion with unspoken hunger, the hunger to be loved, to be seen, to matter. Jung warned that what we deny becomes what controls us. And so, when we deny our selfishness, it doesn't disappear. It disguises itself as virtue. Think about the savior complex, that intoxicating feeling of being the one who helps, who rescues, who gives. It feels noble, but beneath it often lies a hidden arrogance, the assumption that others need saving, and that we are the ones fit to save them. It's a quiet form of domination, painted in moral tones. And society loves it, because saviors are easier to celebrate than self-aware humans. We reward the appearance of goodness more than the presence of truth. We share stories of heroic kindness, but rarely question the psychology behind them. Why do we feel compelled to help? What need does it satisfy in us? And what would happen if we stripped kindness of its applause? If no one saw, no one thanked, no one knew? Would we still be kind then? That's the test, isn't it? True kindness asks nothing. It doesn't come from guilt or fear or ego. But almost all human kindness does. We help because we fear being bad. We give because we fear being empty. We forgive because we fear being alone. And the world, obsessed with image and validation, turns these fears into moral currency. There's a reason stories of altruism spread faster than stories of self-awareness. They give us a sense of collective innocence. They let us believe that humanity, deep down, is good. And maybe it is, but that goodness is not as simple as we want it to be. Because human beings are not purely good or evil. We are contradictions wrapped in consciousness. We are capable of compassion and cruelty in the same breath. And often, our kindness is just the shadow of our fear, wearing perfume to disguise the scent. Consider the parent who sacrifices everything for their child, a beautiful act, but sometimes driven by the unconscious desire to live through the child's success. Consider the friend who always listens, but secretly needs to be the savior, afraid of being the one who needs saving. Consider the partner who forgives endlessly, not because they are noble, but because they fear abandonment. Each of these acts looks kind on the surface, but beneath them lies a quiet desperation for control, approval, or safety. Have you noticed this in your own life? That moment when you do something generous, but feel a twinge of resentment when it's not appreciated? That flicker of anger when your sacrifice goes unnoticed? That's the shadow revealing itself. And it doesn't make you bad, it makes you human. The problem isn't the presence of self-interest, it's the denial of it. Philosophy has wrestled with this tension for centuries. Socrates questioned whether virtue could truly exist without knowledge of the self. Kant argued that moral worth lies in intention, not outcome. Yet intention itself is a maze of unconscious drives. Even neuroscience suggests that altruism activates the brain's reward centers, the same circuits that light up with pleasure, status, or even addiction. So maybe the question isn't whether kindness is selfish, but whether it ever could be anything else. And if that's true, then what is the purpose of kindness at all? If it's so tangled with ego and fear, is it even real? Or is it just another illusion? A social mechanism designed to keep us functioning, cooperating, surviving? The unsettling answer might be both. Kindness is both a mask and a mirror. It hides our motives, but also reflects them. It's a performance that, when observed deeply, reveals the truth beneath the costume. Because even in our most selfish kindness, there's still a trace of something real, a longing to connect, to dissolve the illusion of separation. The problem is that we stop at the mask and call it moral. Society thrives on this shallow version of kindness because it keeps everyone compliant. If people are busy proving how good they are, they never question why they need to prove it. It's a moral treadmill, exhausting, endless, and profitable. Entire industries feed on our hunger to appear kind. The curated online empathy, the branded compassion, the monetized activism. We don't realize that even our virtue has been commodified. But here's where the paradox turns inward. The moment you begin to see through this illusion, the moment you question your own motives, something remarkable happens. You start to feel uncomfortable. You begin to see that your goodness isn't as pure as you believed. That discomfort is the beginning of real awareness. It's not cynicism, it's clarity. Because true morality doesn't come from pretending to be good. It comes from understanding your capacity not to be. It's not about erasing selfishness, but integrating it, recognizing that even your desire to help carries your shadow's fingerprint. Only then can kindness become something deeper than performance. And that's the journey we're taking in this series. We're not here to destroy kindness or mock compassion. We're here to peel back its layers, to see what's hidden beneath the glow. Because buried under all the ego, fear, and social programming, there may still be something sacred. Not kindness as performance, but kindness as truth. But before we reach that light, we have to walk through the shadows first. because only by confronting the darkness in our kindness can we ever hope to find what's real. So stay with me, not out of politeness, but out of curiosity. There's more beneath this mask than anyone wants to admit. And if you want to keep exploring the mind's hidden architecture, the parts of human nature that no one dares to name, then you'll want to stay close. Not for my sake, but for yours. Because the next layer of this illusion isn't just about why we're kind, it's about how kindness itself can become a weapon. And that story is darker still. Kindness has power, but not always the kind we like to imagine. It can uplift, heal, and connect, yes. But it can also subdue, manipulate, and entrap. The truth is, kindness has always been a form of control dressed as compassion. The more you study it, the clearer it becomes. The hand that feeds can also guide, and the one who saves can also rule. This is the part of kindness we don't want to see. Because we've been taught that to question goodness is to flirt with cynicism, to desecrate something sacred. But ignoring the darker function of kindness doesn't make it less real. It only makes us more vulnerable to it. Every culture, every system of power has used kindness as a leash. The smile, the gift, the forgiveness, all can be subtle tools of dominance. And the cruel beauty of it all is that the one being controlled often believes they are being loved. Freud once said that every relationship is a negotiation between love and power. But what happens when love becomes the language through which power hides? Look closely, and you'll see it everywhere, in families, friendships, workplaces, religions. The phrase, "I'm only doing this for your own good," has justified centuries of emotional manipulation. The church tells you to obey for the sake of salvation. Parents impose control in the name of love. Partners restrict freedom and call it protection. We mistake control for care because the hand that holds us feels gentle. But control wrapped in kindness is still control. The warmth of the gesture doesn't erase the coldness of its motive. This is what Nietzsche called the morality of pity, a power dynamic disguised as compassion. He argued that pity is not always love. It can be the instinct of the strong to keep the weak dependent. The one who pities asserts superiority, even if unconsciously. When you feel sorry for someone, you place yourself above them, even while appearing humble. And society runs on this unspoken hierarchy of virtue. Those who appear kind wield invisible authority. The moral high ground is the most strategic vantage point there is. We see it in social movements, where righteousness often becomes a weapon to shame others into compliance. We see it in corporations that advertise empathy while exploiting labor. We see it in the influencers who turn compassion into branding. Kindness has become currency, a tool of persuasion, an image to maintain, a form of soft power. The irony is that we rarely notice, because we are wired to trust kindness. Our brains are evolutionarily biased to see warmth as safety. From infancy, survival depended on the goodwill of others. That ancient wiring still lives in us. When someone acts kind, our defenses lower. We mirror trust, we yield control. In the modern world, that instinct is easy to exploit. Take the manipulator who uses charm instead of force. They don't threaten you, they nurture you. They listen, they flatter, they anticipate your needs. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to align your behavior to keep their warmth. Their approval becomes the prize you crave. This is the psychology of subtle domination, control without coercion, achieved through emotional currency. Psychologists call it covert narcissism, the ability to dominate through care, to extract validation by offering affection. It's not about cruelty, it's about dependency. The more someone gives you, the more indebted you feel. The more indebted you feel, the more compliant you become. The result? You obey not out of fear, but gratitude. And that is a far more efficient form of control. Even institutions understand this. Governments, religions, corporations, all rely on benevolent imagery to sustain influence. Power cloaked in kindness doesn't provoke rebellion. It invites loyalty. The company donates to charity while underpaying workers. The politician hugs children while signing exploitative policies. The church feeds the poor while teaching them obedience. The kindness is real, but it serves a larger structure, one that benefits from appearing virtuous. Foucault would say this is how modern power operates, not by violence, but by shaping conscience. The system doesn't need to threaten you when it can convince you that submission is moral. And kindness is the perfect tool for that, because it doesn't just control what you do, it controls how you think about what you do. You begin to police yourself in the name of goodness. You silence anger because it seems unkind. You suppress boundaries because they seem selfish. You perform empathy even when it exhausts you. This is the tyranny of goodness, a moral cage built from smiles. And you can see it in the smallest corners of daily life. The colleague who guilt trips you into taking on more work because you're so nice. The friend who uses your empathy as a shield to avoid responsibility. The family member who manipulates you through guilt. After everything I've done for you. Each interaction drips with kindness on the surface, but beneath it lies a simple equation. Control traded in the currency of guilt. But why do we fall for it? Why does kindness disarm us so completely? Because we crave approval. From childhood, we learn that love must be earned through compliance. We are praised for being good, not for being true. Every act of kindness we receive reinforces that lesson, that goodness equals safety, that rebellion equals rejection. And so we grow into adults who confuse niceness with virtue, obedience with morality. The system loves that. A society full of nice people is easy to manage. They'll apologize for things they didn't do, stay quiet when they should speak, and smile while being exploited. Niceness keeps everything running smoothly, even when what's running is decay. But the danger of niceness isn't just social, it's psychological. Because suppressing your authentic emotions to appear kind fractures the self. You become divided, the good persona on the outside, the repressed resentment on the inside. Jung warned that the more virtuous the mask, the darker the shadow behind it. The person who strives hardest to be kind often carries the most unacknowledged anger. And that anger, denied expression, doesn't disappear, it mutates. It leaks out through passive aggression, burnout, emotional numbness. Have you noticed how exhausting it is to always be kind? To always smile, always accommodate, always absorb other people's chaos? That fatigue isn't moral failure, it's the cost of repression. Your psyche knows it's unsustainable. But society praises the martyr, the endlessly giving soul, while quietly consuming them. And so, we mistake depletion for goodness. We mistake compliance for virtue. We mistake silence for compassion. All because we fear that saying no will make us unkind. But that fear is exactly how control sustains itself. Because as long as you're afraid of being seen as unkind, you'll never assert yourself. You'll never question authority. You'll never draw a boundary. You'll stay small, polite, digestible. And that's precisely what the world wants, a population of agreeable souls too gentle to resist exploitation. Nietzsche warned about this moral domestication, that the values we call good often evolve to serve the needs of the powerful, not the truth of the individual. In his view, society tames us not through brutality, but through morality. It convinces us that rebellion is immoral and obedience is virtue, and kindness becomes the leash we willingly wear. Yet, to see through this illusion is not to abandon kindness, but to reclaim it, because there is a form of kindness that is not compliance, one that doesn't serve control but consciousness. It's the kindness that tells the truth, even when it hurts. The kindness that refuses to enable manipulation. The kindness that walks away instead of submitting. That kind of compassion doesn't make you soft, it makes you whole. And here's where the real test begins, because the world will punish you for it. People will call you cruel for refusing to play the role they assigned you. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you cold. But what they really mean is that you've stopped being controllable. Have you ever felt that shift? The moment you stop people-pleasing and someone's warmth turned to hostility? That's the exact moment when their kindness was revealed for what it was. Conditional. Their love depended on your obedience. And when obedience ended, so did their affection. That's the moment you see the machinery behind the mask. The gentle words, the sweet gestures, they weren't evil, but they weren't pure either. They were a transaction, a bargain. And the currency was your submission. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start to recognize how often kindness has been used to tame your fire, to silence your truth, to make you small. You begin to understand that real kindness, the kind that liberates, is often mistaken for cruelty. Because it doesn't seek approval, it seeks clarity. And that's what we're moving toward next, the moment where kindness transforms from control into consciousness. Because there's another side to this story, a side that's even more paradoxical. The idea that true compassion isn't soft and it isn't safe. It's fierce. It's boundary-laden. It's truth in motion. So before we continue, take a breath. Let the masks fall. Ask yourself honestly, how many of your kind acts were really just fear in disguise? How many times has someone's kindness kept you small? Because in part 3, we're going to strip kindness of its illusions entirely. Not to destroy it, but to discover what's left when all manipulation, guilt, and control are gone. And that, I promise you, is something far more powerful than niceness. It's freedom. There's a strange quiet that follows awakening, the silence that arrives when illusions finally collapse. Once you've seen the manipulation behind moral facades, once you've understood how kindness can be used to control, you enter a kind of moral exile. You look around and realize you can't go back to the old version of goodness, the smiling compliance, the endless appeasement, the desperate chase for approval. Something in you refuses, and that refusal feels both liberating and lonely. Because when you stop playing the game of conditional kindness, you also stop belonging to the world that runs on it. People begin to look at you differently. Some withdraw. Others accuse you of becoming hard, cynical, cold. But you're not. What they mistake for coldness is simply honesty. What they perceive as cruelty is just clarity without decoration. You're beginning to rediscover what kindness actually is, not the performance of care, but the presence of truth. To understand this new kind of compassion, you must first unlearn everything society told you about it. You must unlearn the idea that kindness means being liked. You must unlearn the reflex to please, to fix, to rescue. You must unlearn the belief that empathy means absorbing everyone else's pain. Real kindness doesn't live there. Real kindness begins where manipulation ends, at the moment when your intention is clean, not because it's selfless, but because it's aware. Awareness changes everything. When you act from awareness, you see your motives clearly. You know when you're giving out of guilt. You know when you're helping to feel superior. You know when you're saying yes to avoid conflict. Awareness doesn't condemn these impulses, it exposes them. It brings them into the light, and in doing so, transforms them. That's the paradox of authentic kindness. It requires self-confrontation before it can reach others. You cannot give what you don't own. You cannot offer truth while living in denial. Jung wrote that the most terrifying journey a person can take is inward, because there they will meet the parts of themselves they have spent a lifetime avoiding. But if you have the courage to meet them, to make peace with your shadow rather than projecting it, something profound happens. Compassion arises, not the sentimental kind, but something deeper. Because when you've seen your own darkness, you stop needing to pretend anyone else is pure. You stop dividing the world into good and evil. You stop judging so quickly. The urge to dominate through morality fades, and what remains is empathy without superiority. It's the kind of compassion that doesn't demand anything in return. It doesn't try to fix. It simply understands. Think of it like this. False kindness says, I will help you because I am good. True kindness says, I will help you because I see myself in you. The first inflates the ego, the second dissolves it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we were made for cooperation, like hands, like eyelids. He understood that kindness was not a performance, but a natural state of alignment with reality. When you act with awareness, kindness stops being a strategy. It becomes an instinct. Not the conditioned instinct of obedience, but the awakened instinct of connection. But getting there means enduring a kind of moral death. You have to let go of the image of yourself as the good person. That identity is intoxicating. It gives you belonging, status, meaning. But it's also a cage. Because as long as you need to be seen as good, your kindness will always be conditional. You'll act out of fear of being misunderstood, rather than from the purity of truth. Nietzsche called this process the death of the old gods, not the deities of religion, but the idols we worship within ourselves. To transcend shallow morality, we must be willing to destroy our attachment to moral image. Only then can something real emerge, what he called the transvaluation of values. In that sense, authentic kindness isn't moral at all, it's existential. It doesn't come from obedience, but from presence. Presence is different from politeness. Politeness smooths edges, hides conflict, maintains peace even when peace is false. Presence, on the other hand, can feel unsettling, because real kindness sometimes looks like confrontation. It can be fierce. It can disappoint. It can say no, walk away, refuse to enable. True compassion is not fragile. It's grounded in truth so deeply that it doesn't need to please. And that's what makes it so rare. Most people want the appearance of kindness because it's safe. It avoids discomfort. But authentic kindness invites discomfort. It's the friend who tells you the truth instead of what you want to hear. It's the parent who lets you fail instead of rescuing you. It's the leader who values integrity over popularity. In a world addicted to niceness, real compassion feels almost violent. But its violence is sacred. It destroys illusions so truth can grow. There's a story from Zen tradition about a master who slapped his disciple during meditation. The disciple was shocked, humiliated. But in that shock, his mind fell silent. In that silence, he woke up. The act looked cruel, but it wasn't. It was pure kindness, stripped of comfort, stripped of image. It wasn't about harm, it was about awakening. That's what real compassion does, it awakens. And awakening by nature disturbs. If you've ever confronted someone you love because you could no longer enable their self-destruction, you know that pain. If you've ever told the truth knowing it would cost you connection, you've felt that ache. That is compassion in its rawest form, the courage to love someone enough to risk their hatred, the strength to value truth over image. This kind of kindness doesn't earn applause. It's quiet, often invisible. It's the doctor who tells a patient the truth they don't want to hear. The teacher who refuses to pass a failing student because integrity matters more than comfort. The friend who walks away because enabling would mean betraying themselves. That's compassion in motion, not as sentiment, but as alignment with reality. You'll notice that the deeper you go into this truth, the fewer people understand it. Because society thrives on comfort, not awareness. The moral system that governs us needs you to keep performing, to smile, to agree, to stay predictable. True compassion breaks that rhythm. It's disruptive, uncontrollable, alive. It doesn't serve the system, it serves the soul. And that's where real liberation begins. When you stop trying to be good, you start becoming real. You start to notice the subtle difference between pity and respect, between helping and enabling, between forgiveness and self-erasure. You start to realize that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to walk away. Sometimes the kindest thing you can say is no. Because authentic kindness doesn't mean doing what makes others feel good. It means doing what allows truth to grow. And when you live from that place, kindness becomes effortless. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to advertise it. It becomes like breathing, natural, unforced, uncalculated. You begin to act, not from guilt or fear, but from deep resonance with life itself. That's what all the great teachers pointed toward in different ways. Buddha called it metta, loving kindness born of wisdom. Not sentimental love, but conscious compassion. Jesus called it loving your neighbor as yourself, not because you should, but because, in truth, there is no separation. Nietzsche, for all his darkness, spoke of a more fatty, the love of one's fate, the radical acceptance of reality as it is. And in that acceptance, cruelty dissolves. Real kindness is not weakness. It's not naivety. It's the strength to stay open in a world that rewards armor. It's the power to face darkness without becoming it. It's the quiet defiance of keeping your heart intact in a civilization that thrives on competition, fear, and control. You might lose friends. You might lose admiration. But what you gain is something no one can give you: authenticity. The unshakable peace that comes from knowing that your kindness is no longer a performance. It's a reflection of truth itself. And maybe in the end, that's what all this was leading to, not the destruction of kindness, but its purification. Not the loss of empathy, but the death of illusion. Because when you strip away the manipulations, the masks, the guilt, and the fear, what remains is simple, radiant, alive. It's not grand. It doesn't need recognition. It just moves quietly through the world, healing, listening, speaking truth when needed, silent when not. That's real compassion. So as we close this exploration, ask yourself, what version of kindness are you living? The one that seeks approval, or the one that seeks truth? The one that keeps peace through silence, or the one that risks peace for honesty? The one that controls, or the one that frees? You already know the answer. It's there, somewhere beneath the noise, in the quiet awareness that doesn't need to perform. That's where all real kindness begins. And if you've followed me this far, maybe it's because something in you is already waking up to that truth. If so, stay with it. Keep questioning, keep noticing, keep peeling back the layers. Because what's waiting beneath all the noise of false virtue isn't emptiness. It's the raw, unfiltered pulse of life itself, the kind of kindness that doesn't control, doesn't perform, doesn't ask to be seen. It simply is. Stay awake. Stay human. And if this journey stirred something in you, not just thought, but awareness, then stay close. Because the deeper we go together, the more we'll uncover what the world tries to hide. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kindest thing we can do.